Dear aspirants, you're all charged up for the upcoming JEE Advanced that is to be held on 21st of May. So here I am with few of awesome tips that will help you fine-tune your preparations and ensure that you get the best possible outcome of the hard work that you have been putting for the last few years. So let's get started. Coming to the total marks that have been targeted in the last few years. So in 2013 and 2014, the total marks were 360, whereas in 2015, the total marks was 504. What happened in 2016 was that the total marks moved on to 372. So what we can see is that every year the marks has been varying. But when we talk about the number of questions that have been asked every year, so every year from 2013 to 2015, in each paper, each subject, 20 questions were asked. But what happened in 2016 was that in every paper, every subject, only 18 questions were asked. So clearly, JEE Advanced is the test of nerves. So tip 1, read the instructions very carefully. So roughly speaking, we can anticipate that there can be 18 to 20 questions in the upcoming examination. So if we account for the time, you have two papers, each of 3 hours. So you'll get nearly 3 minutes per question. Tip 2, don't get entangled to any specific question. Now let us take a brief overview of the different segments and the number of questions anticipated. So from mechanics, you can anticipate 9 questions. Likewise, from electrodynamics, you can anticipate 8 to 9 questions. From heat and thermodynamics, you can anticipate 5 questions. From modern physics, which has been a key scorer in the last few years, you can anticipate close to 7 questions. From optics, 5 questions. And finally, from SHN and waves, you can anticipate 2 questions. So this is the analysis, keeping in mind that you will have nearly 18 to 20 questions per paper. Now what we are going to do is we are going to take a close view of what the paper 1 and paper 2 demand, what are the different sections, what is anticipated from us, keeping in mind that this is what has been happening for the last few years. So let's talk about paper 1. In paper 1, the first section has 5 questions, out of which each question is a 1 option correct MCQ. So overall it has a weightage of 15 marks. So if you answer a question correctly, you are awarded 3 marks. In case of incorrect response, 1 mark is deducted, and in case of no response, you get 0. Let's talk about section 2 of the paper. In section 2, there are 8 questions with 1 or more option correct. Type of MCQ questions. So overall, it has a weightage of 32 marks. If we answer a question correctly, we get 4 marks. That is, if all the options have been taken into account. If you answer a partial response, in that case, you get only 1 marks. And in case of incorrect response, you get minus 2 marks are deducted, and in case of no response, 0. So section 2 is a key factor that has to be kept in mind. Now let's move on to section 3. In case of section 3, we have 5 questions. These are single digit integer type questions. That is, your answer will be either of the digits from 0 to 9, both of the digits included. So if you answer a question correctly, you get 3 marks. In case of incorrect response or no response, you get 0. That is, no negative marks in this segment. Now let's move on to paper 2. In paper 2, in the first section, there are 6 questions, which is 1 option correct MCQ. So the overall weightage is 18 marks. If you answer a question correctly, you get 3 marks. In case of incorrect response, -1 will be deducted, and in case of no response, you get 0. Let's move on to section 2. In section 2, again, like paper 1, there are 8 questions which are 1 or more option correct. That is, again, it will be having a weightage of 32 marks. So here also, if you answer a question correctly, You get 4 marks. For partial correct, you get 1 marks. In case of incorrect, here also minus 2 marks are deducted. And in case of no response, you get 0. Now let's move on to section 3. In section 3, there are paragraph type questions. So there are 2 paragraphs and each paragraph will have 2 questions. And it is a 1 option correct MCQ type of question. So in case of correct question, you get you are awarded 3 marks, and in case of incorrect or no response, you get 0. So the key takeaway is in section 2, you have the maximum possible weightage, and in section 3, there is no negative marks. But we have to keep in mind that this is what has been happening for the past couple of years. So let's now target on to the important segments that has to be prepared before we are there. And I'm sure you must have done this preparation. So if you talk about mechanics, you can anticipate 1 question from computation of errors, motion in a vertical circle, static and dynamic friction, which may be intermingled with some other concept, collision, conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, conservation of angular momentum, calculation of torque, application of perpendicular and parallel axis theorem, calculation of moment of inertia, rolling without slipping. These are some of the important hotcakes that must be prepared. Now when we talk about the properties of matter, terminal velocity, Stokes' law, Bernoulli's theorem, and when we talk about the thermal properties of matter, black body radiation, then Kirchhoff's law, thermal conductivity, heat current, Wien's displacement law, Stephen's law, Newton's laws of cooling, heat flow, and when you talk about the perspective of thermodynamics, different processes which are involved are very, very important. Other properties of matter, if we consider the domain of other properties of matter, we can have terminal velocity, Stokes' law, Bernoulli's theorem. Now when we talk about waves, the section of beats, Doppler's effect, linear and angular SHM, and your superposition of wave, this has been a kind of a recurrent phenomena for the last couple of years. Let's talk about light. Here, total internal reflection, minimum deviation of in case of a prism, application of Snell's law, application of refraction at a spherical surface, Lenz's formula, and a sure short question that comes every year is from Young's double slit experiment. Now let's move on to the electrodynamic part. So here from capacitors, parallel plate capacitor is very, very important. Calculation of net capacitance is again very important. Gauss law is important. Net electric field in a given configuration is very, very important. Net flux, net energy stored in a capacitor. Let's move on to current. Here, effective resistance, application of Kirchhoff's law. Even in case of capacitor, this is relevant. In case of current, we generally see a question that is based on application of Kirchhoff's law. Different bridges, drift velocity, current density, these type of segments are also targeted. Now, if we talk about magnetism, the Biot-Savart's law, Ampere circuital law, magnetic moment, moving coil galvanometer. Moving coil galvanometer is again a very important hotcake. When we talk about EMI and AC, here we can anticipate questions from self and mutual inductance, different circuits like RC circuit, LC circuit, LR circuit with DC and AC configurations is important. Now, if we talk about resonance in LCR series circuit and LC oscillation, that is also an important hotcake. And as I said in the beginning of the discussion, let's talk about modern physics. Here, stopping potential, Einstein's photoelectric equation, hydrogen spectra, Moore's law, de Broglie's wavelength, division and Germer experiment, these type of topics are very, very, very important. So this was a brief overview of the important topics that you must have prepared by now. Now let's focus on the strategy for the upcoming few days. So on the D-Day, you have 2 papers. The first paper is from 9 to 12 p.m. and the second paper is from 2 to 5 p.m. So for the remaining days, every day you need to solve a full-length paper in this time duration. That is from 9 to 12 and from 2 to 5. And it must be solved with the same temperament as if you were taking the JEE Advanced test. Finally, what you need to do on coming Saturday. At max, you should ideally solve only 1 full-length paper. You should take a proper nap of at least 8 hours. You should chill on that day because you worked like really hard, and I'm sure you'll come out with flying colors. Just a word of caution, ensure that you target at least achieving 50%, per paper. That is the minimum threshold that you should ideally target in order to get a decent rank. So wish you all the best, and I'm sure that you'll work like really hard and you'll be coming out with flying colors. All the best. Thank you.